Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of the Cheat Meal presented by Deep Fried Draft. My name is Brian Bosarge. If you're watching, this video is probably going to be up a day earlier than usual. I'll explain why in just a little bit. As we do every week, we're going to review the games that I watched a week ago and preview the games coming up the next week. We're going to start off with some early week action from a week ago. Western Michigan and Ball State. Western Michigan senior wide receiver Corey Davis had an unbelievable performance against Ball State. Davis had 12 catches for 272 yards and 3 touchdowns, which is a school record for yards in a game. Davis is a top-tier talent at wide receiver who may end up in the first-round conversation. Toledo and Akron. Akron junior wide receiver Jerome Wayne is a big, physical, fast wide receiver prospect. He lined up at tight end on the Zips' first offensive possession and had a catch and run for a 91-yard touchdown pass. Lane could be a top 10 prospect at his position next year. Arkansas State and Georgia State. This was one of the most boring games I believe I've watched this season. The quarterback play from both squads was just absolutely atrocious. Georgia State senior wide receiver Robert Davis, a player I mentioned in the preview last week. He had 9 catches for 87 yards, but he did not look particularly dynamic. UCLA and Colorado, Cepho Lufau, he had a rough go of it in this game. He didn't throw an interception in the Buffalo's first 8 games this year, but he threw 2 in the first half. He was knocked out for a brief portion of the second quarter. I was impressed by Colorado senior inside linebacker number 31, Kenneth Oligbodi. Oligbodi is a bit undersized at 6'1", 220, but he moves in space well and he can cover receivers and tight ends down the middle of the field, which is always a plus for a linebacker prospect. For UCLA, a name that has emerged as the season has unfolded in draft circles and amongst NFL scouts is number 98 senior defensive end Takaris McKinley. McKinley averages over 2 tackles for loss per game. In this game, he was pretty much camped out in the Buffalo's backfield. As of right now, I'd easily say he's a top 100 prospect, and he has a chance to elevate into round 1. Saturday it was Georgia Southern and Ole Miss. Georgia Southern running back Matt Breida had 100 yards rushing, but he struggled most of the day. He did have a great run showing off his vision and speed in the second quarter, where he started left, then made a great cut back right and outran the Rebels for a 66-yard touchdown. Ole Miss senior quarterback Chad Kelly was injured in the third quarter. That injury turned out to be a torn ACL and a torn meniscus, and he is not going to play the rest of this season, obviously. Kelly has numerous off-the-field issues, and this is now his second torn ACL. What was once maybe a possibility, he was drafted in the first 3 rounds. Even some people saying he was possibly a first-round pick. I never thought that. But now it's going to be hard-pressed to see him drafted late, if at all. James Madison in Richmond. Richmond senior corner David Jones fractured his arm earlier in the season. I was unaware of this. Poor research on my part. So I took a pass on this game. When I did that, I added a game between Youngstown State and North Dakota State so I could get my FCS game in for the week. And I just continue to love Youngstown State senior defensive end Derek Rivers as a prospect. I wrote a deep fried draft recipe up on Rivers a few weeks ago. You can find that on the website at the DFD cookbook portion of the website. Rivers, he had some pass rush success in this game in the first half, but he wasn't much of a factor in the run game, however, and that's pretty much all the Bison did the rest of the game. Missouri and South Carolina. South Carolina redshirt sophomore wide receiver Debo Samuel who's finally gotten healthy after having some hamstring issues earlier this year, has emerged as one of the better wide receivers in the SEC. He tracks the ball well. He maneuvers well in space. He's quicker than he is fast. In this game, he had 9 catches for 125. Junior cornerback Chris Lamons was ejected for the second consecutive week for the Gamecocks. Last week, he got ejected for throwing some punches at a Tennessee player. This week, he got ejected for targeting as he couldn't pull back when Mizzou QB Drew Lock went to a safety slide. We told you in the preview last week to look out for Missouri junior defensive end Charles Harris. In this game, he had 2 sacks. South Carolina is now, at minimum, a win over Western Carolina away from going to a bowl game, which is something that I did not see as a possibility a few weeks ago. There's also a scenario, albeit far-fetched, but a scenario nonetheless, that could actually see South Carolina make the SEC championship game. BYU and Cincinnati, and I will say whatever pro aspirations that Cincinnati senior quarterback Gunnar Kiel had going into this season to be a pro player, they're pretty much finished now. Forget about for a second his age, what off the field issues he may have, even his injuries. He's just not a good quarterback right now, and especially between the old ears here where it counts. In this game, he was 19 of 32 for 199, no touchdowns, and an interception. But I wrote about Keel over the summer, and to me, he's done as a pro prospect. Iowa and Penn State. Iowa senior quarterback C.J. Beathard. He's about as average a quarterback as you can find in every sense of the word. He makes sound decisions, but he just has average tools, arm, athletic ability, everything, just average. He'll likely find his way into an NFL camp, but I find it hard-pressed to see C.J. Beathard being on the NFL 53-man roster this time next year. Alabama and LSU. Even for an offensive guy like myself, because I love watching games where points are scored, I really enjoyed watching this defensive struggle. Alabama held LSU to only 6 first downs in the game. LSU punted the ball 8 times in the game. LSU senior inside linebacker Kendall Beckwith, junior defensive safety Jamal Adams, and senior cornerback Tre'Davious White, another one who I wrote up earlier this year. They all had great games on defense in a losing effort. I was really impressed by the play of senior nickel corner number 13, Dwayne Thomas. Thomas talked a lot during the week about this game. May have fired up some Alabama players by doing so, but he backed it up in this game with his play. Another player that caught my eye was LSU senior inside linebacker number 40, Duke Riley. Riley made several plays in the Alabama backfield in this game, including 3 plays in a row down the Alabama end of the field. LSU junior running back Leonard Fournette, he'll leave school after this season, never having had any success against Alabama. Just another poor effort for Fournette against the Tide. I didn't really talk about any Alabama players in this game because I've talked about them a lot over the weeks. But just know that their defensive prospects all performed well in this game, including, if not limited to, Tim Williams and Ryan Anderson, their 2 edge rushers. Utah State and Wyoming, due to West Virginia and Kansas running over, my DVR didn't record the first 9 minutes of this game. By the time that I started watching, Wyoming was already up 14. I told myself after I missed so bad on Brett Smith a few years ago that I wouldn't fall for another Wyoming quarterback, but here we are. Redshirt sophomore quarterback Josh Allen, number 17, has great size. He's 6'5", 222, a big arm, and can move. There are going to be people that are going to make comparisons to Carson Wentz, the number 2 overall pick in the last year's draft. They have similar size and builds, and athletic abilities and arms. So they're all very similar. And the connection is they were both recruited by Craig Bowles, who's now the head coach at Wyoming, who was the head coach at North Dakota State a few years ago. One of the better plays I saw Allen make in this game was right towards the end of the first half. He rolled to his left, and he's a right-handed quarterback, rolling to his left, and he just threw an absolute rope 50 yards into the end zone for a touchdown. He finished 16 of 26 for 261 and 4 TDs. He had 1 interception, but he also had 66 yards rushing and a touchdown that way. Another Cowboy player I like more after this game is senior tight end number 88, Jacob Hollister. Hollister's 6'4", 239, can stretch the middle of the field. He's more of a move tight end. He isn't much of a blocker. This week we're only going to be, let's get to the preview section, but I'm going to preface it by saying we're only going to be previewing a handful of games this week, as I'll be taking a mini vacation to Walt Disney World with my wife and my daughter this week on Friday, and driving Thursday, going down for Friday and Saturday, driving back Sunday. So won't have time to watch too many games during the week next week, but we're going to preview a few right now. We're going to start Saturday, 11 a.m. on ESPN with Mississippi State at Alabama. Haven't looked at Mississippi State in a while. Alabama's, of course, coming off their physical game against LSU. Mississippi State's coming off a big upset over Texas A&M this past weekend. In this game, I'm going to look to see if senior defensive end number 47, A.J. Jefferson, and senior defensive tackle number 94, Nelson Adams, will see if they can handle the Alabama offensive line. 11 a.m. on CBS, South Carolina at Florida. South Carolina's resurgent offense under true freshman quarterback Jake Bentley will be severely tested by Florida's fantastic secondary. Florida has 4 DBs that will all likely be drafted, including 2 potential first-round corners, Jalen Tabor and Quincy Wilson. Florida, however, will be without linebacker Alex Anzalone, who will miss the rest of the season in all likelihood with a broken arm. 2:30 p.m. on the American Sports Network, Southern Miss at Old Dominion. It's going to be our first look at the Monarchs this season and their senior wide receiver, number 6, Zach Pascal. I've also heard good things about their senior quarterback, number 10, David Washington, so I want to get a look at him. 2:30 p.m. on CBS Sports Network, Tulane at Houston, and this is another good opportunity to see Tulane senior defensive tackle Tanzel Smart. Houston, as of late, has not played up to their preseason hype, so we'll see how they fare against the Green Wave. 6 p.m. on ESPN2, Wake Forest at Louisville. It's going to be our first look this season at the Demon Deacons. Wake Forest has 3 fringe draftable prospects on defense. They'll number 8 senior inside linebacker Marquell Lee, 6'3", 240. Number 22 senior defensive safety Ryan Janvian, 5'11", 190. And number 25 senior cornerback Brad Watson, 6 foot 200. They'll be hard pressed in this game, however, to contain Heisman Trophy frontrunner Louisville sophomore quarterback Lamar Jackson. 6 p.m. on ESPN, we'll have LSU at Arkansas, and I want to see how will LSU physically respond after their game against Alabama. Most of the time when teams, the week after they play Alabama, they get beat up the week before. They tend to struggle, so we'll see where they're at. I do, however, I think Leonard Fournette is going to bounce back in this game, so we'll see. 6:30 p.m. on Fox, Southern Cal at Washington. This is one of the 2 big tests left for Washington in the regular season, and the other is the Apple Cup game against Wazoo. The big matchup in this one's going to be Trojan junior wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster as he locks up with Washington's junior cornerback Sidney Jones. So that's all the games for this week. Because of my pending vacation, everything will drop a day early at deepfrieddraft.com this week, including this video. So if you're used to looking at us on Wednesday, you're wondering why this came out on Tuesday, there you go. On Wednesday, however, I will be dropping an article where I'm going to try to project the skill position players that the Senior Bowl is going to invite. I think that'll be a fun little exercise to try, and I'm curious to see how that turns out. As we go forward into next week, look for everything that was moved up a day this week. Look for everything to be pushed back a day or so next week, as it's just going to take me at least probably 2 days to get caught up on the games that I've just got through previewing. So thanks for all the views of you guys watching. Follow us on Twitter at Deep Fried Draft. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/DeepFriedDraft. Look us up on YouTube. Search Deep Fried Draft. I may try to work in a quick snack video from the park just to show you guys all the fun I'm having. We'll see about that. We'll see how that goes. So for everyone that watches, thanks and goodbye.